Hello and welcome to this third and final part where we're looking at the GCSE Maths exam paper from AQA. This is June 2018 paper 3 and this is a calculator exam. We're up to question number 20. Let's begin. Question 20, which is also question number 21 for Maths Watch, is as follows. The probability that A is the outcome of an experiment is 0.2. Calculate the probability that A is not the outcome. Probabilities need to add up to give 1. So if we take a total of 1 and we subtract the probability that it is A, we'll end up with the probability that it isn't A. 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8. Question 21. Rearrange E equals 2F to make F the subject. Circle your answer. So to make a subject, that means that we need to end up with it being F equals. F is the subject if it's a letter on its own followed by an equal sign. At the moment, E is the subject and we need to turn it into F, which means that we need to undo this calculation that's been done to F. F is currently being multiplied by 2. So just like solving an equation, if we've got E equals 2F and we want to get rid of that 2, the opposite of multiplied by 2 is divide by 2, which we will do to both sides. So the right, 2F divided by 2 is F, and E divided by 2 will be written as E over 2. So F is equal to E over 2, which means that that is our correct answer. Question 22. Here is a rule for a sequence. After the first 2 terms, each term is half the sum of the previous 2 terms. Here is a sequence that follows this rule. 2, 10, 6. So after the first 2 terms of the 2 and the 10, the next term is half the sum of those previous 2 terms. So 2 plus 10 is 12, and half of that 12 is 6. As we move on to the next number, the previous 2 terms are now 10 and 6. So 10 plus 6 is 16, and half of 16 is 8. 6 plus 8 is 14, half of that is 7. And 8 plus 7 is 15, half of that is 7.5. The question we were being asked to answer is show that the 6th term is the first one that is not a whole number. So by completing these numbers, we've shown that the 6th term is 7.5, and that is the first one that's not a whole number. Part B. A different sequence follows the same rule. The first term is 4, the third term is 9.5. Work out the second term. So that 9.5 is half the sum of the previous 2 terms. So these 2 numbers here would have to be added together to get some sort of total. And when we halve that total, we get 9.5. So if we undo the halving, we can say that 9.5, if we undo the halving and multiply it by 2, gives us 19, which means the sum of these 2 terms must have been 19, and that would be 4 plus 15. So the second term is 15. Question 23. In a group of 20 people, 7 own a dog, 3 own a cat, and 12 do not own a dog or a cat. Aidan shows this information on a Venn diagram. So the Venn diagram here with the circle for owning a dog, owning a cat, and numbers placed within it. Make 2 criticisms of his Venn diagram. So 2 things that have gone wrong. First of all, this 12 should be inside the diagram. The diagram is bordered by this rectangle. There shouldn't be anything outside it except for this symbol, which is telling us that this is called a universal set. All the numbers should appear within the rectangle, so 12 should be inside. The second problem is that this is supposed to be a group of 20 people, but all the numbers that are included, 12, 7 and 3, actually totals 22. So there's the second criticism. The numbers total more than 20. The reason that mistake has been made is that just because 7 people own a dog and 3 own a cat, some of those people may own more than one of each. So there may be people in this middle section that own a dog and a cat, and that hasn't been shown. Okay, so just to show what this should have looked like, the 12 do not own a dog or a cat, so that should have been inside. That's correct. Which means we've now got 8 people to play with. Okay, 8 people that own dogs, cats, or a combination of the two. Now, if you add the 7 and the 3 together for the dogs and the cats, that's 10 people. We've only got 8 to play with, which means the 2 additional people that we see in there actually should go in the middle. 2 people will own a dog and a cat, so they're double counted, which means that with 7 people owning a dog, that would be 2 people who own both, and 5 who only own a dog, and 3 people own a cat, so that'd be 2 people that own a cat and a dog, and just 1 person that only owns a cat. If you look at these numbers in blue now, 12, 5, 2 and 1, that now totals 20. That would be a fully correct Venn diagram. Question 24. A is a common factor of 72 and 120. B is a common multiple of 6 and 9. Work out the highest possible value of A divided by B. Now, before we start moving on to factors and multiples, let's have a look at this bottom section. We're trying to find the highest possible value of A divided by B, so we need to figure out how big we need to make A and B. So let's think of some different calculations so we can figure out what we need to work out. So if we look at 2 divisions here, if I do 10 divided by 2 and 20 divided by 2, which of those gives us a higher answer? Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, 20 divided by 2 is 10, which means that we need to try and make the top number, this A, as big as possible. We need to maximize that number to make our answer as big as possible, which means since we're talking about common factors, we need the highest common factor, often abbreviated to HCF, highest common factor of 72 and 120. Now let's figure out what we need to do with B. So if I once again show you some calculations, if I've got 20 divided by 2 and 20 divided by 10, which of those gives us the bigger answer? 20 divided by 2 is 10, 20 divided by 10 is 2, which means that this first one gave us the bigger answer, which means we need to make the bottom number as small as possible. So that number B needs to be as small as possible to make this whole calculation the highest possible value it can be. So if B needs to be small, we need a common multiple as small as possible, which means that we need the lowest common multiple, LCM, of 6 and 9. So those are the 2 things that we need to work out for this question. We need to work out the highest common factor of 72 and 120 and the lowest common multiple of 6 and 9. Let's start with the highest common factor. You can do this in a few ways. So you could do this in a tree diagram, so you could factorize this out and deconstruct it, or you can write down the factors of the numbers. That's what I'm going to do. So for 72, we can write down pairs of numbers that multiply to give 72. So we've got 1 pairs with 72. 2 would pair with 36, because 2 times 36 is 72. 3 times 24. 4 times 18. 5 doesn't go into it, but 6 times 12 is 72. 7 doesn't go in, but 8 times 9 is 72. So we've written down all of the factors of 72. Now if we do the same for 120, we've got 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 7 doesn't go in, but 8 and 15, 9 doesn't go in, but 10 and 12 do. Now that we've got all of the factors for both 72 and 120, to find the highest common factor, we need the biggest number that appears in both lists. That's the number 24. So 24 is the highest common factor of 120 and 72, which means that 24 is going to be the value of A. So I'm going to write that there for where my final answer is going to be. Now we need to find the value of B, and that's going to be the lowest common multiple of 6 and 9. So the multiples are the numbers in the times table. So the 6 times table is 6, 12, 18, 24, 30 and so on. Multiples of 9 is 9, 18, 27, 36, 45 and so on. And the lowest common multiple of 6 and 9 is the first number that appears in both lists, which in this case is 18. So 18 is the lowest common multiple of 6 and 9, so 18 is our value for B. If you wrote 24 over 18, that is enough for the final answer. You may wish to simplify it. If I want to simplify this, I can divide both 24 and 18 by 6, which will give us a fraction of 4 over 3, which is either the same as 1 and 1/3 as a fraction, or 1.3 recurring, so that means that 3 goes on forever, 1.33333 and so on, and that will be the highest possible value of A divided by B. Question 25. A and B are similar shapes. B is an enlargement of A with a scale factor 1.5. Work out the values of X, H and W. Right, first of all I'm going to deal with that angle X. When we enlarge a shape, it changes the size of each of the sides, but doesn't change the size of any of the angles. That angle of 54 degrees is still exactly the same as that angle of 54 degrees. So X is 54 degrees. Now we need to work out the lengths of the sides. So B is an enlargement of A with a scale factor of 1.5, which means that if you take a length of a side in A and multiply it by 1.5, you will get the size of that same side in B. So to work out H, we are doing 5 multiplied by 1.5 to give 7.5. So H is 7.5 centimeters. If we're going from shape B to A, we're doing the opposite, so we're going to be making it smaller. So W multiplied by 1.5 is 9. So to go backwards, we're going to do 9 divided by 1.5 to give 6. So W is 6 centimeters. Question 26. Investment A is where you save £150 per month for 2 years. 2.5% interest is added to the total amount saved. For investment B, we invest £3,500 and compound interest is added at 3% per year. after 2 years, how much more is investment B worth than investment A? Now for this question, I'm going to be using a multiplier method for increasing by these percentages. There are longer methods available if you wish to look them up, but I'm going for a multiplier. Starting with investment A, we're going to save £150 per month for 2 years. So first of all, let's work out how much money we save in 1 year. So we're saving £150 every month for 1 year. There are 12 months in a year, which means in 1 year we will save £1,800. So in 2 years we'll save that £1,800 twice, which means we will have savings of £3,600. Now we're going to be adding 2.5% interest on top of that, and I said we're going to do this using a multiplier. Here's how a multiplier works. You're starting with a basic amount. Now your base amount we will call 100%. That's the 3,600. We're then going to be adding an extra 2.5%, which means that once we are finished, we will end up with 102.5% of the original amount. That can be turned into a multiplier by writing it as its decimal equivalent, which means you take that percentage and divide it by 100 to turn it into a decimal, which means that's 1.025, and that is known as a multiplier. Which means that to work out how much money we have in total, we take our amount saved, which is 3,600, and we multiply it by 1.025, which means we'll be increasing by 2.5%, which means we will have saved £3,690. So there's investment A done. For investment B, we're investing £3,500 and we're having compound interest at 3% per year. Now once again, we're going to be doing this using a multiplier, so let's find out what our multiplier is going to be. So for investment B, we're starting with our base amount of 100%, and we're then going to be adding 3%, which means at the end of each year we will end up with 103% of the starting amount. So 103% as a multiplier, if we divide that by 100, is 1.03. So there's our multiplier to increase something by 3%. Now we're going to be doing this for 2 years, which means that we're going to start off with 3,500 and we're going to multiply it by 1.03. That will work out how much money we have at the end of the first year, and then we'll multiply it again by 1.03 to work out how much we'll have at the end of the second year. In some textbooks and some revision guides, you may see this written as 3,500 times 1.03 squared, because 1.03 times by itself is squared, and that power is representing the number of years. So power of 2 for squaring would represent us doing this for 2 years. When we work that calculation out, so 3,500 times by 1.03 times by 1.03, we'll find that we will have saved £3,713.15. To end our question, we want to work out how much more investment B is worth than investment A, which means we need to take both of our investment amounts and find out how much bigger B is than A. That's a subtraction, so we're going to do £3,713.15 subtract £3,690, which means in total investment B is worth £23.15 more than investment A. So there is our final answer. Question 27. Show that the lines y equals 3x plus 7 and 2y minus 6x equals 8 are parallel. Do not use a graphical method. which means you're not allowed to draw a graph to show this. Now, even though I'm not allowed to show a graphical method, I just want to show you what it means that two things are parallel. So just so you can see, any random lines, if I've got a set of axes, if I've got a line going up like that, and a line going up like that, they are parallel if they are the same steepness. Now, steepness is also known as gradient, which means we need to make these two things and show that they have the same gradient. Now, where you find that comes from the equation of a standard line. You often see this called y equals mx plus c. The y and the x are the x and y coordinates and the axes on the graph. So we've got x and we've got y. And we've got the letters m and c. Now, c is called the y-intercept. What that means is that that's the number that the line cuts through the y-axis on. So this top line up here, if it cut through the number 2, for example, that means that that would end with plus 2. What we're interested in is the m, so the number in front of the x, that is the gradient. So you can see from our first equation, y equals 3x plus 7, the gradient of that line is 3 because that's the number in front of the x. So for the first one, for y equals 3x plus 7, the gradient is equal to 3. To show that these two things are parallel, we now need to rearrange this second equation to try and show that that also has a gradient of 3. So we've got 2y minus 6x equals 8. Now we need to make it y equals. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this minus 6x. To get rid of minus 6x, we need to do the opposite, which means we need to add 6x. And we need to do that to both sides. So once that's done, we'll end up with 2y equals, and you can either write this as 8 plus 6x, or I'm going to write it as 6x plus 8, because those are the same thing. Once we've got this, once again, we need to turn it into y equals, which means we need to get rid of the 2, which means we need to divide everything by 2. Once we do that, we end up with y equals 3x plus 4, which once again has a gradient of 3. And that's the end of that question. Since we have shown that both of those lines have the same gradient of 3, that means that they are parallel. Part B. Is the point minus 5 minus 6 above, below, or on the line y equals 3x plus 7? So it's either above, below, or on the line, and we must show our working. Right, for the coordinates, minus 5, minus 6, the first number in a set of coordinates is the x value, the second one is the y value. So we need to basically substitute this x value of minus 5 into this equation and find out what y ends up being. So y is equal to 3x, so that's going to be 3 multiplied by the x value, which is minus 5, and then we're going to add 7. So 3 times minus 5 is minus 15, and when we add 7 to minus 15, that means that we are going up towards 0 if you imagine a temperature scale. So minus 15 plus 7 is minus 8. So the coordinate minus 5 minus 8 is on the line, which means that since minus 6 is higher than minus 8, once again think of temperature, minus 6 is above minus 8, that means that that point will be above the line. Question 28. The cost of a ticket increases by 10% to £19.25. work out the original cost. Now, this can be used for any sort of question that involves what's called a reverse percentage, which means that you're working out an original cost if you are given a new cost. So let's have a look at how this new ticket price was calculated to begin with. So someone took an original cost. They then added on some sort of increase to that cost. And once they'd done that calculation, they ended up with a new price. In percentages, the original is always 100%. For our question, we're told that the increase is by 10%, which means the new price is 110% of the original price. Now, this £19.25 is the new price. So 110% of our value is £19.25. And since we're trying to work out the original cost, we need to work out what only 100% would be. Now, you can do this in a few ways. I'm going to use what's called the unitary method, which basically means that I'm going to take this 110% and take it down to 1%, a single unit of a percentage. And in order to do that, I need to divide that number by 110. Which means that on the right hand side, I also need to divide £19.25 by 110. And when you do that, you get 0.175. There's 1%. We can then scale that back up to 100% by multiplying by 100. And so on the right hand side, 0.175 multiplied by 100 is £17.50. So the original price was £17.50. Question 29. The nth term of a sequence is 12n minus 5. Work out the numbers in the sequence that have 2 digits and are not prime. Right, the nth term of a sequence is 12n minus 5, means that we are substituting the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on to get those numbers in the sequence. So here's our values of n. So the first number, the second, third, fourth, fifth, 6, 7, 8, 9, and if we need any more, we'll add to that. We're then going to take those numbers and apply it to this. 12n minus 5 means we're going to multiply those numbers by 12. So 12n means n times 12, and then we're going to subtract 5 from them. So if n is 1, 12 times 1 is 12, then minus 5 is 7. Now 7 can't be correct because it does not have 2 digits, so I'm going to eliminate it. If I put n as 2, 12 times 2 is 24, minus 5 is 19. 19 has 2 digits, but 19 is also a prime number, and we want numbers that are not prime. I'm going to eliminate 19. 12 times 3 is 36, minus 5 is 31. Once again, that has 2 digits, but that's a prime number. We don't want prime numbers. For 4, 12 times 4 is 48, minus 5 is 43. That's also a prime number, so I'm going to eliminate it. 12 times 5 is 60, minus 5 is 55. Now that has 2 digits, it is not a prime number. There's the first number that is going to be as part of our answer. Carrying on. 12 times 6 is 72, minus 5 is 67. 67 is a prime number, therefore we're not going to include it. 12 times 7 is 84, and 84 minus 5 is 79. 79 is a prime number, therefore it's not going to be included. 12 times by 8 is 96, and 96 minus 5 is 91. 91 can be divided by 7, so it is not a prime number, so there's another correct answer. And 12 times 9 is 108, and 108 minus 5 is 103. We are now at the point where we no longer have 2-digit answers. That's got 3 digits, so that's not included, and we don't need to go any further because any numbers after that are going to have more than 2 digits, which means the numbers in the sequence that have 2 digits and are not prime are the numbers 55 and 91. And finally, question number 30. We have 3 vectors. A is the vector 6 minus 10, B is the vector minus 1, 2, and C is the vector minus 4, 7. Work out A plus B plus C. That means we're taking these vectors of 6 minus 10, minus 1, 2, and minus 4, 7, and we are adding them together. Now when you are adding vectors together, we're going to do the calculations with the top numbers to work out what our new top number is going to be, and then we do the same calculations to the bottom numbers to work out the new bottom number. So across the top, 6 plus minus 1, or when you've got a plus and a minus next to each other, that becomes a minus. So 6 plus minus 1 is 5 plus minus 4, so 5 minus 4 is 1. Across the bottom, minus 10 plus 2 is minus 8, and minus 8 plus 7 is minus 1. So A plus B plus C becomes the vector 1 minus 1. And 30b, show that A plus 2C equals KB, where K is an integer. Let's do that in 2 parts. Let's first of all work out the answer to the left hand side. A plus 2C means we're taking the vector A, which is 6 minus 10, and we're adding on 2C, which means that's 2 multiplied by C, which is minus 4, 7. Now I'm going to work this out first, because in BIDMAS we do multiplications before additions. So I'm still going to have the 6 minus 10, but then we're going to add on the new vector, and when we're multiplying a vector by a number, that means we're doing that 2 times each of those numbers individually. 2 times minus 4 is minus 8, and 2 times 7 is 14. And then just like part A, when we add them together, top numbers first, 6 plus minus 8 is minus 2, and the bottom number, minus 10 plus 14 is 4. Now to show that this is equal to KB, we need to say, is there a number that we can multiply this vector of minus 1, 2 to become minus 2, 4? And if you look at both of those numbers, they are both double what we have in B. So actually 2B is equal to 2 times minus 1, 2, which is the minus 2, 4. So we have shown that A plus 2C is minus 2, 4, and that's equal to KB, which is basically saying that the value of K is this number 2. And that's all you need. That is the end of that exam paper. That's the end of AQA June 2018, paper 3. Goodbye.